The rain in the city had a way of turning everything grey, the buildings, the sky, the hope. Aries huddled in his cardboard alcove, a doorway that belonged to a shuttered bakery, feeling the damp seep through the thin fabric of his coat. He wasn't always here. Once, there had been a small apartment, a job as a janitor, a life of simple, clean order. A single medical bill for his mother, long gone now, had been the first domino, and the collapse was swift and total. Now, his world was measured in coins, in the warmth of a discarded coffee cup, in the small kindness of a stale sandwich. His only possession of any remote value was an old, leather-bound notebook, a gift from his mother. He used it to track the meager donations, to sketch the faces of passers-by, to write down fragments of poetry that came to him in the quiet hours. It was a record of a shrinking life. One particularly brutal evening, a man in a suit, phone pressed to his ear, tripped over Aris's outstretched legs. With a curse, the man righted himself, brushing filth from his tailored trousers, and hurried on, leaving behind a single, crumpled bill from his pocket. It was a 50. A fortune. Aris's first instinct was survival. A proper meal, a thick blanket, a week in a hostel. But as he clutched the note, a different memory surfaced. His mother, patiently teaching him chess on a cracked board. "See the whole board, Ari," she'd say. "Anyone can move a pawn. The game is won by seeing 3 moves ahead." He looked at the 50. A pawn. The next morning, clean and fed, he went not to a store, but to the public library. He spent days there, reading. He learned about microfranchising, about bulk purchasing, about unmet needs. He saw the other people in his situation, spending their small change on single-serving packets of everything. He used half of his money to buy a giant bulk bag of quality coffee beans, a stack of filter papers, and a dozen thermoses from a charity shop. He spent a day grinding beans by hand at the library's community kitchen, filling thermoses. At dawn, he stood outside the lines at the temp agencies. Hot coffee. $1. It wasn't charity, it was a transaction. A dose of dignity for $1. The workers, cold and weary, saw the value. His thermoses emptied by 8 a.m. He reinvested. Added pastries from a day-old bakery outlet. Within a month, he had a sturdy cart, a permit he'd meticulously applied for, and a small, loyal customer base. He was a businessman. The notebook transformed. Now it held supply costs, customer preferences, profit margins. He saw another gap. His customers, the working poor, had no access to easy banking, to cash advances between paychecks. Loan sharks bled them dry. Aries remembered the suffocating weight of debt. He used his growing savings to create a different system. Small, short-term loans, at a humane, fixed interest, repayable in tiny increments at his coffee cart. His word was his bond. He kept impeccable records in the notebook. He never loaned more than he could afford to lose, but he rarely lost. He was building trust, the one currency the streets lacked. The cart and coin system became legendary in the low-income districts. It was a savings club, a microlender, a community hub. A local news story about the banker barista went viral. It caught the eye of a venture capitalist named Elena Marks, who had made her fortune in fintech but had become disillusioned by its cold, exclusionary algorithms. She sought Aries out, finding him not in a boardroom but at his original cart, still serving the dawn shift. She saw the meticulous notebook, the easy rapport, the tangible trust. She saw a revolutionary, human-powered financial network. He saw a woman who understood scale, who spoke of technology not as a barrier, but as a bridge. Their partnership was the final, pivotal move. She provided the capital and tech expertise to build a secure, app-based version of his system, StarterCoin. He provided the ethos, the community trust, the proven model. It wasn't a faceless bank, it was Aris's system, digitized. It allowed the unbanked to build credit, access tiny loans, and save securely. It spread from city to city. A decade later, Aries stood on the balcony of a penthouse apartment, the city glittering below. The quiet was profound. He was a billionaire on paper, his stake in Startercoin worth an absurd fortune. But the money felt abstract, a number in the ledger that had once been his mother's notebook. The real wealth was in the hundreds of thousands of accounts opened, the small businesses funded, the cycles of poverty broken. He had seen the whole board. The pawn had reached the other side and been crowned. He turned from the skyline, walked to a simple shelf, and took down the old, leather-bound notebook. He ran a hand over its worn cover, a faint smile touching his lips. The first page still held his mother's inscription, "For your thoughts, my son." He had filled it, not just with thoughts, but with a blueprint for a kingdom. The journey from beggar to billionaire was not a path of luck, but a slow, deliberate game of chess, played one move, one cup of coffee, one kept promise at a time. The game was won, but he knew the board was vast, and there were always more pieces to move.